In this video, we uncover the harrowing story of a 60-year-old woman who set sail alone across the Atlantic, chasing a dream that turned into a nightmare. What started as a courageous solo voyage quickly spiraled into tragedy, raising urgent questions about preparation, risk, and the unforgiving nature of the open ocean. Sailing alone demands more than determination. It requires sharp judgment, fail-safe systems, and deep respect for the sea's unpredictability. As we retrace her final days at sea, we'll highlight the overlooked decisions, the critical moments, and the chain of events that led to a terrible accident that no one saw coming. Through this real-life story, we'll explore what every sailor, especially those sailing solo, needs to know to avoid a similar fate. From emergency planning to psychological endurance, this is more than a cautionary tale. It's a wake-up call for anyone who dares to face the ocean alone. So stay with us, and let this heartbreaking voyage remind us all of the fine line between adventure and catastrophe on the high seas. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon, because every story brings a lesson worth learning. The salt-laden breeze whipped across the docks of Las Palmas, Gran Canaria, on a crisp November morning in 2023, carrying with it the hum of anticipation. Isabella, a wiry 60-year-old Brazilian with silver streaks in her dark hair, stood beside her 38-foot sloop, Ventos do Mar, her hands tracing the smooth fiberglass of the hull. The boat was her pride, a vessel she had meticulously prepared for the journey of a lifetime, a solo crossing of the Atlantic from the Canary Islands to St. Lucia in the Caribbean. For Isabella, a retired engineer with decades of coastal sailing experience, this was more than an adventure. It was a testament to her resilience, a celebration of her 60th year. Her eyes, sharp and weathered, scanned the horizon, where the vast Atlantic waited, both a promise and a challenge. The Ventos do Mar was a sturdy sloop, its single mast rigged with a mainsail and genoa, both recently inspected and reinforced. Isabella had spent months outfitting the boat for the 2,700-mile journey. The deck was equipped with a spray hood to shield her from breaking waves, and below, the cabin held provisions for a month: freeze-dried meals, canned goods, and a desalination kit for fresh water. A new autopilot system, a critical piece for solo sailing, would allow her to rest in short bursts, while the GPS and chart plotter were backed by paper charts and a sextant, a nod to her traditional navigation training. The radio VHF crackled softly as she tested it, and the EPIRB, a beacon for emergencies, was securely mounted. Her life jacket, fitted with a harness and tether, hung ready by the companionway. Every detail, from the spare halyards to the storm jib, had been checked twice. Isabella was no stranger to the sea's unpredictability. She had raced dinghies in her youth and cruised Brazil's coast for years, but this was her first ocean crossing, and she felt the weight of it. As she cast off from the marina, the docks receded, and the Ventos do Mar slipped into the open water. The trade winds, steady and reliable in November, filled the sails, the mainsail taut and the genoa pulling the boat forward at a brisk 6 knots. Isabella stood at the helm, her hands light on the wheel, feeling the boat's rhythm as it sliced through the gentle swells. The first day was idyllic. Dolphins arced alongside, their sleek bodies glinting in the sunlight, and the sky stretched endlessly blue. She set the autopilot, adjusted the mainsail's traveler to optimize the angle to the wind, and settled into her routine. Every few hours, she checked the GPS, plotting her position on the chart, and logged her progress in the ship's logbook, a leather-bound journal where she also jotted her thoughts. Day 1, she wrote, "The sea is kind, the wind, a friend. I feel alive." The route from Las Palmas to St. Lucia was a well-trodden path for sailors, favored for the trade winds that blow steadily west across the Atlantic. Isabella had chosen November to avoid the hurricane season, aiming for a 20 to 25-day passage. Her plan was to maintain a course slightly south of the rum line, following the arc of the trade winds, a strategy known as the milk run for its relative ease. She monitored the weather via satellite updates, her eyes scanning for signs of squalls or shifts in the wind. The first few days were smooth, the boat holding a steady course as she adjusted the sails to keep them full, the telltales fluttering perfectly. At night, she clipped her harness to the jacklines running along the deck, a precaution against falling overboard, and slept in short naps, waking every hour to check the horizon and the instruments. By day 5, Isabella had settled into the solitude. The sea was her world now, a vast, undulating expanse that stretched to every horizon. She cooked simple meals on the gimbaled stove, swaying with the boat's motion, and found comfort in the routine. Check the sails, inspect the rigging, log the position, eat, rest, repeat. The autopilot hummed quietly, steering the boat while she read or gazed at the stars, their brilliance undimmed by city lights. She practiced celestial navigation, using her sextant to shoot the sun at noon, calculating her latitude with a pencil and her old navigation tables. It was a skill she rarely needed with modern GPS, but it grounded her, connecting her to the sailors of centuries past. "The stars are my companions," she wrote in her log. They're light, a reminder of how small I am, yet how far I've come. First challenge came on day 7. A tear appeared in the Genoa, a small rip along a seam, likely from the constant strain of the trade winds. Isabella hove to, bringing the boat to a near stop by backing the jib and easing the mainsail, allowing her to work safely on the foredeck. Clipped to the jack lines, she hauled the Genoa down, her hands steady as she stitched the tear with sailmaker's thread, reinforcing it with a patch. The repair took hours, her fingers aching from the needle, but she felt a surge of pride when the sail was hoisted again, catching the wind as before. "Fixed the Genoa," she logged. "The sea tests you, but I'm ready." As the days passed, the solitude began to weigh on her. The constant motion of the boat, the creak of the rigging, and the slap of waves against the hull became her only sounds. She talked to herself sometimes, narrating her tasks aloud to break the silence. Sleep deprivation crept in, her naps too brief to fully restore her. By day 10, she noticed her focus slipping once. She mistook a cloud for a ship on the horizon, a brief hallucination that startled her. She increased her rest periods, setting alarms to wake her every 30 minutes, but the exhaustion lingered. The sea, for all its beauty, was relentless, demanding constant vigilance. On day 12, the weather shifted. The satellite reports warned of a low-pressure system approaching, bringing stronger winds and higher seas. Isabella prepared for rougher conditions, reefing the mainsail to reduce its area and switching to the smaller storm jib. The waves grew, their crests curling white, and the wind howled at 25 knots, gusting higher. The Ventos du Mar pitched and rolled, the autopilot struggling to hold course. Isabella took the helm manually, her arms straining against the wheel as she steered downwind to ease the boat's motion. The spray soaked her foul weather gear, and the cold seeped into her bones. "Waves like mountains," she wrote that night, her handwriting shaky. "I'm tired, but I can do this." The storm intensified over the next 2 days, testing every ounce of her skill. She navigated by feel as much as by instruments, keeping the boat at an angle to the waves to avoid broaching. A dangerous sideways turn that could capsize the sloop. The wind screamed through the rigging, and the mainsail's battens strained against the gusts. Isabella's world narrowed to the boat and the sea. Her mind focused on each adjustment, easing the main sheet, tightening the preventer to stop the boom from swinging, checking the bilge for water. She was alone, 1,000 miles from land, with no one to rely on but herself. The thought was both empowering and terrifying. By day 15, the storm showed no sign of abating. Isabella's exhaustion was palpable, her eyes red-rimmed, her movements sluggish. She had barely slept, catching only brief naps between waves that threatened to overwhelm the boat. The autopilot, battered by the constant strain, began to falter, forcing her to steer manually for hours. Her log entries grew sparse, her words reflecting her fatigue. Wind, 30 knots. Waves, 10 feet. Holding on. She knew she needed to jibe, to shift the boat's course to better ride the storm, but the maneuver was risky in such conditions. A jibe required swinging the mainsail across the boat, and a misstep could snap the boom, or worse. In the early hours of December 5, 2023, with the storm at its peak, Isabella made her decision. Clipped to the jacklines, she moved to the cockpit, her hands gripping the mainsheet. The wind roared at 35 knots, the waves towering over the deck. She began the jibe, easing the mainsail and preparing to swing the boom. But a sudden gust caught the sail, wrenching it violently. The boom swung faster than she anticipated, and before she could duck, it struck her head with a sickening crack. Her harness, not fully secured in her haste, failed to hold her. Isabella was thrown overboard, her body vanishing into the churning, black waves. The Ventos du Mar sailed on, its autopilot blindly holding course. The Eperbe, triggered by the impact, sent a distress signal, but help was days away. When a search vessel found the sloop a week later, adrift and battered, Isabella was gone. Her logbook, still open in the cabin, ended with a final, unfinished entry. Storm worsening, I am. The sea had claimed her tragic end to a journey of courage and dreams. The Atlantic stretched endlessly under a gray December sky in 2023, its waves carrying the weight of secrets. The Ventos du Mar, Isabella's 38-foot sloop, drifted aimlessly, its sails flapping loosely in the dying storm. The autopilot, though battered, still held a ghostly course, steering the empty vessel through the swells. Below deck, the cabin was a snapshot of Isabella's final moments, a half-eaten meal on the gimbaled stove, a chart marked with her last plotted position, and her logbook, open to an unfinished sentence. The Eperbe signal, a faint pulse in the vast ocean, had alerted the Maritime Rescue Coordination Center in the Azores. But the response was slow, hampered by the storm's lingering fury. For Isabella, the 60-year-old Brazilian who had dared to sail alone across the Atlantic, time had run out. The distress signal reached the Azores Center on December 6, 2023, pinpointing the Ventos du Mar roughly 1,200 miles west of the Canary Islands. A search and rescue operation was launched, involving a Portuguese naval vessel and a merchant ship diverted from its route. The sea was still rough, with waves cresting at 8 feet and winds gusting to 20 knots, making the search a grueling task. The rescuers scanned the horizon for signs of life, a flare, a life raft. Anything but the ocean offered nothing. On December 8th, the merchant ship spotted the sloop, its hull bobbing in the swells, the Genoa partially torn and the mainsail loofing wildly. The crew boarded the Ventos du Mar, hoping to find Isabella, but the boat was empty. The cockpit showed signs of a struggle, a tangled mainsheet, a preventer line snapped, and the boom hanging at an odd angle, its gooseneck fitting strained from the violent jibe that had likely caused the accident. The rescuers pieced together what they could. The EPIRB's activation suggested a sudden emergency, and the unsecured harness, still clipped to the jack line, hinted at a fall overboard. The logbook, retrieved from the chart table, provided the final clues. Isabella's last entry, dated December 5th, read, "Storm worsening. I am." The words trailed off, the pen left on the page as if she had been interrupted. The crew noted the boat's condition. The bilge was dry, the batteries still powered the instruments, and the GPS showed a wandering track, evidence of the autopilot's futile attempts to maintain course after Isabella's fall. The storm jib was still set, a testament to her efforts to manage the worsening conditions. The rescuers secured the boat, furling the sails and setting a tow line, but their focus shifted to searching for Isabella. They combed the surrounding waters, calculating drift patterns based on the currents and wind, but after 48 hours, hope faded. The sea was too vast, the odds too slim. Back in Brazil, Isabella's family waited in anguish. Her daughter Clara, a marine biologist in Rio de Janeiro, had been tracking her mother's journey via satellite messages, though the last one, sent on December 4th, was brief. "Rough seas ahead, but I'm managing. Love you." When the rescue center contacted Clara, informing her of the APIRB signal and the abandoned boat, she clung to the possibility that Isabella had survived, perhaps in the life raft stowed on deck. But the raft was still aboard when the sloop was found, its release mechanism untouched. Clara flew to the Canary Islands, joining the maritime authorities to coordinate the search, her heart torn between grief and defiance, refusing to believe her mother was gone. Isabella's brother, Marcos, a retired naval officer, joined her, bringing his expertise to analyze the boat's condition when it was towed to port in Tenerife. The Ventos du Mar was inspected thoroughly. The hull was intact, though scuffed from the storm's battering. The rigging showed wear, with a frayed halyard and a bent spreader, likely from the violent gusts. The boom's gooseneck fitting was cracked, supporting the theory that a sudden jibe had caused the accident. Maritime investigators concluded that Isabella, exhausted and battling the storm, had likely been struck by the boom during the maneuver. Without her harness fully secured, she was thrown into the sea, unable to climb back aboard. Such accidents were not uncommon in solo sailing. The relentless demands of the sea often pushed even experienced sailors to their limits. The investigators noted the absence of a man-overboard beacon, a device that might have helped locate her, but even that was no guarantee in 14-foot waves. The sailing community, tight-knit and spread across online forums and yacht clubs, mourned Isabella's loss. Her story had been followed by a small but dedicated group of sailors who admired her courage. In Las Palmas, where she had spent weeks preparing, fellow cruisers gathered at the Marina bar, raising glasses of rum to her memory. They shared stories of her meticulous preparations, how she double-checked every shackle and spliced her own lines, her engineer's precision evident in every detail. A post on a sailing forum read, "Isabella was one of us, chasing the horizon. She knew the risks, but she sailed anyway. Fair winds, amiga." The sentiment echoed across the Atlantic, from the Canaries to the Caribbean, where sailors preparing for the same crossing paused to reflect on the sea's unforgiving nature. Clara and Marcos, back in Brazil, organized a memorial on a windswept beach near Florianopolis, where Isabella had first learned to sail as a teenager. Friends and family gathered, their faces etched with sorrow and pride. Clara read from her mother's logbook, sharing passages about the dolphins, the stars, and the torn Genoa she'd repaired with steady hands. She wrote that the sea made her feel alive, Clara said, her voice breaking. Even in her final moments, I know she was fighting, doing what she loved. Marcos, his naval training, keeping his emotions in check, spoke of her skill, how she'd mastered celestial navigation and could reef a sail in a gale. They scattered flowers into the surf, a silent offering to the ocean that had claimed her. The Ventos du Mar was eventually shipped back to Brazil, where Clara decided to restore it, not to sail again but as a tribute to her mother's spirit. She spent months in a boatyard sanding the hull and varnishing the tick, each stroke a way to process her grief. The boat became a symbol of Isabella's dream, a reminder that courage could coexist with tragedy. Clara kept the logbook, its pages, a window into her mother's final days, and occasionally read it, finding solace in the words that captured Isabella's love for the sea. In the broader sailing world, Isabella's story became a cautionary tale. discussed in safety seminars and yacht club meetings. Instructors emphasized the importance of securing harnesses, using man-aboard beacons, and avoiding risky maneuvers like jibbing in a storm. Yet they also celebrated her ambition, her refusal to let age or solitude deter her. A small regatta in Las Palmas was named in her honor, the Isabella Solo Challenge, a race for single-handed sailors to test their skills along the same trade-wind route she had taken. Each year, competitors paused at the starting line, offering a moment of silence. For the woman who had sailed into the storm and never returned, for Clara, the loss was a wound that never fully healed. She carried her mother's sextant, a heavy brass instrument engraved with Isabella's initials, as a keepsake. On clear nights, she would sit on the beach, aiming it at the stars, trying to recapture the connection her mother had felt. The Atlantic, vast and indifferent, held no answers. But Clara found peace in imagining Isabella out there, her sails full, her heart alight with the thrill of the open sea. The tragedy was not the end of her story, but a chapter in a life defined by daring. Isabella had sailed to prove she could, and though the sea had taken her, it could not erase the wake she left behind.